Hello, guys. First of all, I want to say the SEC versus Binance case has been rescheduled to next week. Why? Snow. That's right. Mother Nature does not want the SEC to be so giddy on prosecuting Binance. And realistically, I actually think the SEC is in real trouble here. Why? Well, let's put it this way, because of last week's Coinbase case, and the judge in the Binance case has actually been listening to the Coinbase case. How has she been listening to the Coinbase case? Well, let's actually take a look. The judge in the Binance case actually wants a well-defined definition of a security and staking. Now, the staking is otherwise, I think we can know what staking is, just kind of like, I guess, like validating or mining or something. Well, it's not really mining, like validating or staking to maintain the network for extra money or something like that. But what a security is, I think the SEC is going to have a lot of trouble with. And they're probably squirming really hard right now to determine what a security actually is. Because you remember famously in the Coinbase case, the SEC could not actually find the difference between what they call securities and beanie babies. So according to them, beanie babies would be securities. Of course, the judge was like, sure, beanie babies, securities. All right, son, you go and with your securities issue. And I don't think the judge actually bought it. And the judge in the Binance case does actually know that. So they're giving a little bit of time for them to define what a security is before they rip the SEC apart, because the SEC can't really defend their own definition of a security. So they're going to come up with a lot of examples of the SEC's definition, and then they're going to rip those examples apart and rip the SEC's definition apart. And this is not something that favors the SEC, because the SEC has always kind of relied on a more tenuous definition of security where they can stretch it to whatever they want. But the judge has pushed for clarity regarding key terms like securities and staking, and that's really on the SEC, especially the securities definition, because the SEC has never really determined what is actually a security, and they've been stretching the Securities Act of 1933 and 1934 to try to to say everything's a security. But if they go too tight on the definition, they'll run into the Beanie Babies problem. If they don't go tight enough on the definition, then like cryptos aren't going to be securities. So I think Gary Gensler is basically going to be stuck between a rock and a hard place. And I do think the judge in the Binance case is going to take cues from the judge in the Coinbase case, because the Coinbase judge obviously knows a lot about this technology, or she's read up on it a lot, and she has fought the SEC interpretation because it doesn't really make any sense. So Gary Gensler is finally going to have to define what a security actually is without going outside of its bounds and bringing up and having the other side bring up like ridiculous examples of what would actually be a security under the SEC's definition. So basically, like, both of these parties are going to define it. There's probably going to be some fight over court on this, but I do think the SEC is not going to be able to hold water, because I do think the Binance lawyers are just as good as the Coinbase lawyers, and they have something from Coinbase to go off of. And of course, there's going to be a dispute to establish crystal clear definitions on pivotal matters, notably what qualifies as a security. And like I said, this is bad for the SEC, because the SEC has done every single thing they could to not establish crystal clearly what a security actually is, because then they would actually have to follow the rules on the security, which they don't want to do. The SEC wants to stretch the rules to call it whatever they want. And of course, like the judge in the Binance case, her name is Amy Berman Jackson, and she's called for a court examination of whether digital assets, including cryptocurrencies, are securities, which is exactly why she wants clarity. And she highlighted the necessity for arguments regarding how the SEC interprets existing regulatory frameworks, specifically the Howey test, in the context of the crypto industry. The Howey test stands as the SEC's primary standard for identifying securities, play a significant role in legal actions against various used crypto firms, including Ripple, Coinbase, and Binance. Remember, they already lost the Ripple case. They're not doing too well in the Coinbase case, and I don't think the Binance case is actually going to go their way. Remember, the SEC is not suing the Binance for fraud. That is the DOJ's job. The SEC is strictly on the securities issue. And even when the DOJ was pelting out punishments against Binance, they did not actually mention securities fraud as one of those crimes that Binance has committed. So the SEC is not receiving any support for this stuff. Judge Jackson, who's the judge in the Binance case, will entertain arguments from Binance's defense on whether a digital asset remains a security in perpetuity, which I think the Coinbase judge kind of shot down. The SEC's claims regarding staking as potential security will also be examined, and the judge was in the Coinbase case was incredibly skeptical about like whether the staking stuff were counted as securities. So essentially, like they initially scheduled it for today, but there was a massive snowstorm, so they will actually begin Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time a.m. according to an order signed by Judge Jackson. So the SEC argues classifying certain cryptocurrencies as securities is essential for investor protection. We don't agree with that. We don't really want the SEC's protection. You can protect the ETFs, they're securities, but the actual assets are not. The SEC has warned against altering the Howey test, arguing it would unleash legal chaos. But the thing is, it's a 1933 test. I do think it does need to be altered because like no one really knew no one had any idea what cryptos were back then. And cryptos are like a different thing than your traditional stock market because you do not own shares in the company by owning a crypto, and they have functionalities outside of just being a representative of a part of the network that you earn. And the SEC has argued in other court cases before that they've agreed that the crypto itself is not a security, but the ecosystem around them is a security, which makes it really hard for them to actually say that Bitcoin or Ethereum is not a security. So I do actually think they will trip up on their own words, and they'll do it right in front of the judge. I don't think their lawyer is going to have any way out of any of this stuff. And of course, like the judge right here is trying to provide clarity for the entire industry. And that's what the SEC has been trying to avoid ever since suing these crypto exchanges. But I think the SEC is running out of options at this point, and they're going to have to determine what is a security according to them very well. And it's not just going to be like look at the Howey test. They're going to have to define the physical attributes or the economic attributes of a security, which I do think it's going to be very difficult for them to do. And I can't wait to see them fail hilariously at it in court on Monday. If it's anything like the Coinbase trial, they are going to be in a lot of trouble. And the article has noted from Daily Coin that this definition of a security is definitely something that Gary Gensler and the SEC has had trouble in the past because they don't want to lock themselves down to one definition of a security. They want to be able to stretch it, and they're using a very loose interpretation of the Securities Act of 1933, which I don't think the judge will agree with. I don't think I've seen like one judge actually completely agree with the SEC on their interpretation of the securities law. So that will be very interesting. On a lighter note, there's a church that allegedly used a crypto token and that was backed by nothing but God's word. Now, we all know God's word is actually the Bible, so they're claiming that this token is backed by the Bible. Now, obviously, I don't really believe this. I don't think God would actually back any crypto token. So a Colorado couple had their assets frozen by a state judge after making millions on a cryptocurrency they say created at God's command. Of course, you can say like, you can lie and say anything's created by God's command. There's no way anyone can disprove that or prove that, only you know. So they made millions of dollars raised through a crypto token they marketed to devout Christians and claimed was made because of God's instruction. Not really sure about this one, folks. Can't say I believe them. So they got $3.2 million, and the coin was called INDX coin, a crypto token they issued through an online church, Victorious Grace. Yeah, I would not buy crypto tokens issued via online churches. I wouldn't really, if a church doesn't have a physical location and it's solely an online church, I'd definitely check twice to see what they're really about. The Colorado commissioner sued the couple, claiming they fraudulently deceived investors and illegally sold securities without paper registration. On Thursday, a Colorado judge froze the assets of Victorious Grace Church based on those allegations. So obviously there's going to be scams like this. I don't know about like illegal securities fraud, but I think just like fraud overall would definitely cover this case. These guys claim that INDX coin was pegged to an index of cryptocurrencies and backed by enough assets to secure the peg. In reality, the Colorado Securities Commission alleges the coin was backed by almost nothing. And now they're saying it's backed by God's word. Now, God's word obviously has infinite monetary value, but you can't actually prove in court that it's actually backed by God's word, unless God himself descends into court and tells people otherwise. So that's really what their legal defense rests on. A miracle of God actually coming down into the court and telling people that he commissioned this coin. If he does, then this will be a grand awakening of the world. But if he doesn't, these guys are going to be guilty, and they probably should be thrown in jail because of fraud. So that's the news for today. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Hit that bell notifications button. Thank you, and have a nice day.